A man's new apartment seems perfect, except for one peculiar detail: a doorknob that, despite his every effort, refuses to turn to the left. I moved in a week ago. The apartment was perfect, almost too perfect. Sunlight streamed through large windows, overlooking a quiet, tree-lined street. It was spacious, clean, and best of all, affordable. A steal in this city. The previous tenant had left in a hurry, the landlord said. Some kind of family emergency. They'd left behind a few things, odds and ends, mostly junk. But there was one thing that caught my eye. A doorknob. It was on the door to the spare bedroom, a room I didn't really need. It was an antique, brass, intricately designed with swirling patterns that seemed to shift and change when you looked at them too long. It was beautiful, in a way, but also unsettling. It didn't match the rest of the apartment's modern, minimalist style. It was the only door in the apartment that wasn't white, but a deep, dark brown, almost black. The odd thing about the doorknob was that it wouldn't turn to the left. I tried, of course. Everyone tries a doorknob. It turned smoothly to the right, as expected. But to the left, it was stuck fast. It wouldn't budge. I mentioned it to the landlord, a burly man named Mr. Henderson, when he came by to collect the rent. He just shrugged. "Old building," he said, his eyes avoiding mine. "Things get stuck. Don't worry about it." But I did worry. The doorknob became an obsession. I found myself staring at it, drawn to its strange design, its stubborn refusal to turn. The scratching started a few nights later, a faint, almost imperceptible sound, like nails on wood. It seemed to be coming from behind the door with the stuck doorknob. At first, I dismissed it as the building settling, or maybe rats. But it continued, night after night, always the same. A soft, persistent scratching, followed by a faint thud, like something heavy was being dragged across the floor. My curiosity and a growing sense of unease got the better of me. I pressed my ear against the door, listening. The scratching stopped. Then a whisper, so faint I could barely hear it. "Help me!" I recoiled from the door as if it were on fire. My heart hammered in my chest. I told myself I was imagining things, that it was just the wind, or the pipes, or anything but what it sounded like. But the whispers continued, night after night, growing louder, more desperate. And the scratching, it was getting more frantic, more violent. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to know what was on the other side of that door. I tried everything to open it. I used WD-40. I tried to force it with a screwdriver. I even tried to take the whole doorknob off. Nothing worked. It was as if the doorknob was welded in place, eternally locked. Then one day, I noticed something new. A small, almost invisible crack had appeared on the door, right next to the doorknob. It was thin, like a hairline fracture, but it was definitely new. And it seemed to be growing. As the crack expanded, the whispers from the other side became clearer. They were no longer just pleas for help. They were threats, promises of pain, descriptions of things I couldn't comprehend, things that made my blood run cold. I started having nightmares, vivid, terrifying dreams of the room beyond the door, a dark, empty space filled with shadows that moved on their own. And in the center of the room, a figure, shrouded in darkness, its face obscured, but its eyes glowed with a malevolent red light. Sleep became impossible. The scratching, the whispers, the nightmares, they were constant, relentless. I was losing my mind, my grip on reality slipping away. The doorknob, once an object of curiosity, was now an object of pure terror. One night, driven to the brink of madness, I stood before the door, staring at the doorknob, at the crack that was now a gaping fissure running down the center of the door. The whispers were a deafening roar in my ears, the scratching a frantic, desperate clawing. And then, I felt it, a presence behind me. I turned, slowly, and saw a figure standing in the hallway. It was tall and gaunt, its features obscured by shadow. But I could see its smile, a wide, impossibly wide grin that stretched from ear to ear. And its eyes. They glowed with the same malevolent red light I had seen in my dreams. It was one of the figures from the stack of drawings I had found. It was a smiling one. It didn't move, didn't speak. It just stood there, smiling, watching. I turned back to the doorknob. My hand trembled as I reached for it. The whispers were screaming now, a chorus of voices begging me, pleading with me, threatening me. And then, without conscious thought, my hand turned the doorknob to the left. It turned. The door creaked open, revealing not the spare bedroom I expected, but a vast, empty expanse. It was the room from my nightmares, the room from the drawings, a void of swirling shadows and shifting darkness. The red-eyed figure from my dreams stood in the center, its form solidifying, becoming more defined, more terrifying. It reached out a long skeletal hand, its touch promising an eternity of suffering. The whispers intensified, merging into a single deafening roar that filled my mind, drowning out all other thoughts. But then, something unexpected happened. As the figure reached for me, another figure emerged from the darkness behind it. It was a woman, her face pale and drawn, her eyes filled with a desperate sadness. She was dragging something behind her. As she came closer, I realized what it was. It was a body, the body of a man, his face contorted in a silent scream, his skin a sickly gray. It was the previous tenant. The woman looked at me, her eyes pleading. Then she spoke, her voice a hollow whisper that seemed to come from the depths of the void. "He couldn't stop it," she said, her voice laced with an eternity of sorrow. "He couldn't resist the pull. He filled the page, and it filled him." She gestured to the body she dragged. "This is what happens. This is the price. Don't finish the story. Don't let it out." Then she looked down at the body she was dragging, a tear tracing a clean path through the grime on her cheek. "He tried to warn the next one," she whispered, almost to herself. "He tried to lock it away, but it always finds a way. It always needs a new ending." She looked up at me then, and in her eyes, I saw a reflection of my own terror. "It chose you next." The red-eyed figure lunged. The woman moved in front, shielding me, and was absorbed into the darkness with a silent scream, the body she was pulling disappearing with her. I stumbled back, slamming the door shut. The doorknob turned back to its locked position with a sickening click. The scratching and the whispers stopped. I moved out the next day. I didn't tell the landlord about the door, about the whispers, about the things I had seen. I just left. I never wrote again. But sometimes, in the quiet hours of the night, I see it. A blank page, waiting to be filled. And I hear them, faint but persistent, the whispers from the other side, calling to me, tempting me to finish the story. And I wonder who will be next. Who will be the next to find the doorknob that only turns one way? Who will be the next to answer the call of the blank page? Don't look for it. Don't listen for it. Because if you find it, if you hear it, it might already be too late. It might already have chosen you. It might be your turn to write the ending.